A roundtable discussion with Dr. Cornel West, professor of the practice of public philosophy at Harvard University, author of many books, including Race Matters and Black Prophetic Fire. And
you agree that, of course, the murder of George Floyd was a lynching. You've also said that his murder and the demonstrations that have followed show that America is a failed social experiment. So could you respond to that? And also the way that the state and police forces have responded to the protests following George Floyd's killing, with the National Guard called out in so many cities and states across the country.
Well, there's no doubt that this is America's moment of reckoning. But we want to make the connection between the local and the global, because you see, when you sow the seeds of greed, domestically, inequality, globally, imperial tentacles, 800 military units abroad, violence in AFRICOM and Africa, supporting various regimes, dictatorial ones in Asia and so forth. There is a connection between the seeds that you sow of violence externally and internally. Same is true in terms of the seed of hatred, of white supremacy, hating black people, anti-blackness, hatred having its own dynamic within the context of a predatory capitalist civilization obsessed with money, 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 domination of workers, marginalization of those who don't fit, gay brothers, lesbian sisters, trans, and so forth. So it's precisely this convergence that my dear sister Professor Taylor is talking about, of the ways in which the American empire imploding, its foundations being shaken with uprisings from below. The catalyst was certainly Brother George Floyd public lynching. But the failures of the predatory capitalist economy to provide the satisfaction of the basic needs of food and health care and quality education, jobs with a decent wage, at the same time, the collapse of your political class, the collapse of your professional class. Their legitimacy has been radically called into question, and that's multiracial. It's the neo-fascist dimension in Trump. It's the neoliberal dimension in Biden and Obama and the Clintons and so forth. And it includes much of the media. It includes many of the professors in universities. The young people are saying, you all have been hypocritical. You haven't been concerned about our suffering, our misery, and we no longer believe in your legitimacy. And it spills over into violent explosion. And it's here, I won't go on, but I mean, it's here where I think Ella Baker and Fannie Lou Hamer and Rabbi Heschel and Edward Said, and especially Brother Martin and Malcolm, their legacies, I think, become more central because they provide the kind of truth-telling, they provide the connection between justice and compassion in their example, in their organizing, and that's what is needed right now. Rebellion is not the same thing in any way as revolution. And what we need is a nonviolent revolutionary project of full-scale democratic sharing, power, wealth, resources, respect, organizing, and the fundamental transformation of this American empire.
And your thoughts, Professor West, on the governor of Minnesota saying they're looking into white supremacist connections to the looting and the burning of the city, and then President Trump tweeting that he's going to try to put Antifa, the anti-fascist activists, on the terror list, which he cannot do, and William Barr emphasizing this, saying he's going after the far left to investigate.
No, I mean, that's ridiculous. You know, you remember, Sister Amy, and I love and respect you so, that Antifa saved my life in Charlottesville. There's no doubt about it, that they provided the security, you see. So the very notion that they become candidates for a terrorist organization, but the people who are trying to kill us, the Nazis, the Klan, they're not candidates for terrorist organization status. But that's what you're going to get. You're going to get a Trump-led neo-fascist backlash and clampdown on what is going on. We ought to be very clear about that. That neo-fascism has that kind of obsession with militaristic imposition in the face of any kind of disorder. And so we got to be fortified for that. But most importantly, I think we've got to make sure that we preserve our own moral, spiritual quality, our fundamental focus on truth and justice, and keep track of legalized looting, Wall Street greed, legalized murder, police, legalized murder abroad in Yemen, in Pakistan, in Africa, with AFRICOM, and so forth. That's where our focus has to be, because with all of this rebellious energy, it's got to be channeled through organizations rooted in a quest for truth and justice.
Comment on what Professor Keeanga-Yamahtta Taylor said, and also the fact that some observers are saying that all of these emergencies occurring simultaneously, the economic emergency with over 40 million Americans now unemployed, the health crisis with the pandemic, that these could result, and then, of course, these protests across the country, that these could result in some significant structural transformation within the U.S., as occurred in part following the Great Depression and the protests of '68. Do you agree with that? And if so, what kind of transformation do you think is essential?
Well, I would just want to say first, just ditto to what Sister Taylor said. And I want to say, of course, send my salute to Brother Bakari. He's part of a family of political royalty with Brother Cleveland and others in so many ways. But I think we also have to be very candid about the decadent leadership class. That when Sister Taylor talks about Cuomo and the others, absolutely. But you see, we've had a black leadership that has so sanitized and deodorized the black freedom struggle that you end up with neoliberal politicians who have accommodated themselves to the Wall Street greed. That's why they bail out Wall Street rather than everyday people. They've accommodated themselves to the killing machine of the Pentagon and State Department. That's why they can vote for budgets where 53% of every cent goes to the military, and there's no money left for investment in education, healthcare, jobs with a living wage. And we haven't had enough organized voices to bring critique to bear on that kind of decrepit neoliberal black leadership. And Obama's at the center of it. The Black Caucus is at the center of it. Black professionals are at the center of it. And these cowardly black celebrities, not all of them, but most of them are at the center of it. So their lives become simply lives of luxury and exemplary of success, and have little to do with service to poor people, have little to do with sacrificing for working people. So that when Martin King can say, my country is the biggest purveyor of violence in the world, that takes courage. In '68, takes courage today. That's the kind of courage we need. Malcolm would be the same way. Fannie Lou, Ella Baker, these are not just names. They exemplify something that's deep and rich in the history of a hated people who've taught the world so much about love. That's my tradition, the greatness of black people, not the cowardliness of black people. We got both in our community, but our tradition of telling the truth and being willing to live and die for justice, that is what is necessary in this moment of reckoning. And we don't, young folk hardly see it at all. Hardly see it at all. Because so many of the professionals have simply been bought off. They sold out. They're indifferent. They're too callous to the plight of their poor and working class, not just black, everybody, not just here, but around the world, the wretched of the earth that the great Frantz Fanon wrote about with such power.